Chapter 12 of Science of Being Well. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Jill Preston. Science of Being Well by Wallace D. Wattles. Chapter 12. Hunger and Appetite. It is very easy to find the correct answer to the question, how much shall I eat? You are never to eat until you have an earned hunger, and you are to stop eating the instant you begin to feel that your hunger is abating. Never gorge yourself. Never eat to repletion. When you begin to feel that your hunger is satisfied, know that you have enough, for until you have enough, you will continue to feel the sensation of hunger. If you eat as directed in the last chapter, it is probable that you will begin to feel satisfied before you have taken half your usual amount, but stop there all the same. No matter how delightfully attractive the dessert or how tempting the pie or pudding, do not eat a mouthful of it if you find that your hunger has been in the least degree assuaged by the other foods you have taken. Whatever you eat after your hunger begins to abate is taken to gratify taste and appetite, not hunger, and is not called for by nature at all. It is therefore excess, mere debauchery, and it cannot fail to work mischief. This is a point you will need to watch with nice discrimination, for the habit of eating purely for sensual gratification is very deeply rooted with most of us. The usual dessert of sweet and tempting foods is prepared solely with a view to inducing people to eat after hunger has been satisfied, and all the effects are evil. It is not that pie and cake are unwholesome foods. They are usually perfectly wholesome if eaten to satisfy hunger and not to gratify appetite. If you want pie, cake, pastry, or puddings, it is better to begin your meal with them, finishing with the plainer and less tasty foods. You will find, however, that if you eat as directed in the preceding chapters, the plainest food will soon come to taste like kingly fare to you, for your sense of taste, like all your other senses, will become so acute with the general improvement in your condition that you will find new delights in common things. No glutton ever enjoyed a meal like the man who eats for hunger only, who gets the most out of every mouthful, and who stops on the instant that he feels the edge taken from his hunger. The first intimation that hunger is abating is the signal from the subconscious mind that it is time to quit. The average person who takes up this plan of living will be greatly surprised to learn how little food is really required to keep the body in perfect condition. The amount depends upon the work, upon how much muscular exercise is taken, and upon the extent to which the person is exposed to cold. The wood chopper who goes into the forest in the wintertime and swings his axe all day can eat 2 full meals. But the brain worker who sits all day on a chair in a warm room does not need 1/3 and often not 1/10 as much. Most wood choppers eat 2 or 3 times as much, and most brain workers from 3 to 10 times as much as nature calls for. And the elimination of this vast amount of surplus rubbish from their systems is a tax on vital power. The average person who takes up this plan of living will be greatly surprised to learn how little food is really required to keep the body in perfect condition. The amount depends upon the work, upon how much muscular exercise is taken, and upon the extent to which the person is exposed to cold. The wood chopper who goes into the forest in the winter time and swings his axe all day can eat 2 full meals, but the brain worker who sits all day on a chair in a warm room does not need 1/3 and often not 1/10 as much. Most wood choppers eat 2 or 3 times as much, and most brain workers from 3 to 10 times as much as nature calls for, and the elimination of this vast amount of surplus rubbish from their systems is a tax on vital power, which in time depletes their energy and leaves them an easy prey to so-called disease. Get all possible enjoyment out of the taste of your food, but never eat anything merely because it tastes good. and on the instant that you feel that your hunger is less keen, stop eating. If you will consider for a moment, you will see that there is positively no other way for you to settle these various food questions than by adopting the plan here laid down for you. As to the proper time to eat, there is no other way to decide than to say that you should eat whenever you have an earned hunger. It is a self-evident proposition that it is the right time to eat and that any other is a wrong time to eat. As to what to eat, the eternal wisdom has decided that the masses of men shall eat the staple products of the zones in which they live. The staple foods of your particular zone are the right foods for you, and the eternal wisdom, working in and through the minds of the masses of men, has taught them how best to prepare these foods by cooking and otherwise. And as to how to eat, you know that you must chew your food, and if it must be chewed, then reason tells us that the more thorough and perfect the operation, the better. I repeat that success in anything is attained by making each separate act a success in itself. If you make each action, however small and unimportant, a thoroughly successful action, your day's work as a whole cannot result in failure. If you make the actions of each day successful, the sum total of your life cannot be failure. A great success is the result of doing a large number of little things and doing each one in a perfectly successful way. If every thought is a healthy thought, and if every action of your life is performed in a healthy way, you must soon attain to perfect health. It is impossible to devise a way in which you can perform the act of eating more successfully, and in a manner more in accord with the laws of life, than by chewing every mouthful to a liquid, enjoying the taste fully, and keeping a cheerful confidence the while. Nothing can be added to make the process more successful, while if anything be subtracted, the process will not be a completely healthy one. In the matter of how much to eat, you will also see that there could be no other guide so natural, so safe, and so reliable as the one I have prescribed: to stop eating on the instant you feel that your hunger begins to abate. The subconscious mind may be trusted with implicit reliance to inform us when food is needed, and it may be trusted as implicitly to inform us when the need has been supplied. If all food is eaten for hunger, and no food is taken merely to gratify taste, you will never eat too much. And if you eat whenever you have an earned hunger, you will always eat enough. By reading carefully the summing up in the following chapter, you will see that the requirements for eating in a perfectly healthy way are really very few and simple. The matter of drinking in a natural way may be dismissed here with a very few words. If you wish to be exactly and rigidly scientific, drink nothing but water. Drink only when you are thirsty. Drink whenever you are thirsty, and stop as soon as you feel that your thirst begins to abate. But if you are living rightly in regard to eating, it will not be necessary to practice asceticism or great self-denial in the matter of drinking. You can take an occasional cup of weak coffee without harm. You can, to a reasonable extent, follow the customs of those around you. Do not get the soda fountain habit. Do not drink merely to tickle your palate with sweet liquids. Be sure that you take a drink of water whenever you feel thirst. Never be too lazy, too indifferent, or too busy to get a drink of water when you feel the least thirst. If you obey this rule, you will have little inclination to take strange and unnatural drinks. Drink only to satisfy thirst. Drink whenever you feel thirst, and stop drinking as soon as you feel thirst abating. That is the perfectly healthy way to supply the body with the necessary fluid material for its internal processes. End of Chapter 12. Recording by Jill Preston. Chapter 13 of Science of Being Well. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Jill Preston. Science of Being Well by Wallace D. Wattles. Chapter 13. In a Nutshell. There is a cosmic life which permeates, penetrates, and fills the interspaces of the universe, being in and through all things. This life is not merely a vibration or form of energy, it is a living substance. All things are made from it. It is all and in all. This substance thinks, and it assumes the form of that which it thinks about. The thought of a form in this substance creates the form. The thought of a motion institutes the motion. The visible universe with all its forms and motions exists because it is in the thought of original substance. Man is a form of original substance and can think original thoughts, and within himself man's thoughts have controlling or formative power. The thought of a condition produces that condition. The thought of a motion institutes that motion. So long as man thinks of the conditions and motions of disease, so long will the conditions and motions of disease exist within him. If man will think only of perfect health, the principle of health within him will maintain normal conditions. To be well, man must form a conception of perfect health and hold thoughts harmonious with that conception as regards himself and all things. He must think only of healthy conditions and functioning. He must not permit a thought of unhealthy or abnormal conditions or functioning to find lodgment in his mind at any time. In order to think only of healthy conditions and functioning, man must perform the voluntary acts of life in a perfectly healthy way. He cannot think perfect health so long as he knows that he is living in a wrong or unhealthy way, or even so long as he has doubts as to whether or not he is living in a healthy way. Man cannot think thoughts of perfect health while his voluntary functions are performed in the manner of one who is sick. The voluntary functions of life are eating, drinking, breathing, and sleeping. When man thinks only of healthy conditions and functioning, and performs these externals in a perfectly healthy manner, he must have perfect health. In eating, man must learn to be guided by his hunger. He must distinguish between hunger and appetite, and between hunger and the cravings of habit. He must never eat unless he feels an earned hunger. He must learn that genuine hunger is never present after natural sleep, and that the demand for an early morning meal is purely a matter of habit and appetite, and he must not begin his day by eating in violation of natural law. He must wait until he has an earned hunger, which, in most cases, will make his first meal come at about the noon hour. No matter what his condition, vocation, or circumstances, he must make it his rule not to eat until he has an earned hunger, and he may remember that it is far better to fast for several hours after he has become hungry than to eat before he begins to feel hunger. It will not hurt you to go hungry for a few hours, even though you are working hard, but it will hurt you to fill your stomach when you are not hungry, whether you are working or not. If you never eat until you have an earned hunger, you may be certain that insofar as the time of eating is concerned, you are proceeding in a perfectly healthy way. This is a self-evident proposition. As to what he shall eat, man must be guided by that intelligence which has arranged that the people of any given portion of the earth's surface must live on the staple products of the zone which they inhabit. Have faith in God, and ignore food science of every kind. Do not pay the slightest attention to the controversies as to the relative merits of cooked and raw foods, of vegetables and meats, or as to your need for carbohydrates and proteins. Eat only when you have an earned hunger, and then take the common foods of the masses of the people in the zone in which you live, and have perfect confidence that the results will be good. They will be. Do not seek for luxuries, or for things imported or fixed up to tempt the taste. Stick to the plain solids, and when these do not taste good, fast until they do. Do not seek for light foods, for easily digestible or healthy foods. Eat what the farmers and working men eat. Then you will be functioning in a perfectly healthy manner, so far as what to eat is concerned. I repeat, if you have no hunger or taste for the plain foods, do not eat at all. Wait until hunger comes. Go without eating until the plainest food tastes good to you, and then begin your meal with what you like best. In deciding how to eat, man must be guided by reason. We can see that the abnormal states of hurry and worry, produced by wrong thinking about business and similar things, have led us to form the habit of eating too fast and chewing too little. Reason tells us that food should be chewed, and that the more thoroughly it is chewed, the better it is prepared for the chemistry of digestion. Furthermore, we can see that the man who eats slowly and chews his food to a liquid, keeping his mind on the process and giving it his undivided attention, will enjoy more of the pleasure of taste than he who bolts his food with his mind on something else. To eat in a perfectly healthy manner, man must concentrate his attention on the act with cheerful enjoyment and confidence. He must taste his food, and he must reduce each mouthful to a liquid before swallowing it. The foregoing instructions, if followed, make the function of eating completely perfect. Nothing can be added as to what, when, and how. In the matter of how much to eat, man must be guided by the same inward intelligence or principle of health, which tells him when food is wanted. He must stop eating in the moment that he feels hunger abating. He must not eat beyond this point to gratify taste. If he ceases to eat in the instant that the inward demand for food ceases, he will never overeat, and the function of supplying the body with food will be performed in a perfectly healthy manner. The matter of eating naturally is a very simple one. There is nothing in all the foregoing that cannot be easily practiced by anyone. This method, put in practice, will infallibly result in perfect digestion and assimilation, and all anxiety and careful thought concerning the matter can at once be dropped from the mind. Whenever you have an earned hunger, eat with thankfulness what is set before you, chewing each mouthful to a liquid and stopping when you feel the edge taken from your hunger. The importance of the mental attitude is sufficient to justify an additional word. While you are eating, as at all other times, think only of healthy conditions and normal functioning. Enjoy what you eat. If you carry on a conversation at the table, talk of the goodness of the food and of the pleasure it is giving you. Never mention that you dislike this or that. Speak only of those things which you like. Never discuss the wholesomeness or unwholesomeness of foods. Never mention or think of unwholesomeness at all. If there is anything on the table for which you do not care, pass it by in silence or with a word of commendation. Never criticize or object to anything. Eat your food with gladness and with singleness of heart, praising God and giving thanks. Let your watchword be perseverance. Whenever you fall into the old way of hasty eating or of wrong thought and speech, bring yourself up short and begin again. It is one of the most vital importance to you that you should be a self-controlling and self-directing person, and you can never hope to become so unless you can master yourself in so simple and fundamental a matter as the manner and method of your eating. If you cannot control yourself in this, you cannot control yourself in anything that will be worthwhile. On the other hand, if you carry out the foregoing instructions, you may rest in the assurance that insofar as right thinking and right eating are concerned, you are living in a perfectly scientific way, and you may also be assured that if you practice what is prescribed in the following chapters, you will quickly build your body into a condition of perfect health. End of Chapter 13. Recording by Jill Preston. Chapter 14 of Science of Being Well. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Jill Preston. Science of Being Well by Wallace D. Wattles. Chapter 14. Breathing. The function of breathing is a vital one, and it immediately concerns the continuance of life. We can live many hours without sleeping, and many days without eating or drinking, but only a few minutes without breathing. The act of breathing is involuntary, but the manner of it and the provision of the proper conditions for its healthy performance falls within the scope of volition. Man will continue to breathe involuntarily, but he can voluntarily determine what he shall breathe, and how deeply and thoroughly he shall breathe, and he can, of his own volition, keep the physical mechanism in condition for the perfect performance of the function. It is essential, if you wish to breathe in a perfectly healthy way, that the physical machinery used in the act should be kept in good condition. You must keep your spine moderately straight, and the muscles of your chest must be flexible and free in action. You cannot breathe in the right way if your shoulders are greatly stooped forward and your chest hollow and rigid. Sitting or standing at work in a slightly stooping position tends to produce hollow chest. So does lifting heavy weights or light weights. The tendency of work of almost all kinds is to pull the shoulders forward, curve the spine, and flatten the chest. And if the chest is greatly flattened, full and deep breathing becomes impossible, and perfect health is out of the question. Various gymnastic exercises have been devised to counteract the effect of stooping while at work, such as hanging by the hands from a swing or trapeze bar, or sitting on a chair with the feet under some heavy article of furniture, and bending backward until the head touches the floor, and so on. All these are good enough in their way, but very few people will follow them long enough and regularly enough to accomplish any real gain in physique. The taking of health exercises of any kind is burdensome and unnecessary. There is a more natural, simpler, and much better way. The better way is to keep yourself straight and to breathe deeply. Let your mental conception of yourself be that you're a perfectly straight person, and whenever the matter comes to your mind, be sure that you instantly expand your chest, throw back your shoulders, and straighten up. Whenever you do this, slowly draw in your breath until you fill your lungs to their utmost capacity. Crowd in all the air you possibly can, and while holding it for an instant in the lungs, throw your shoulders still further back and stretch your chest. At the same time, try to pull your spine forward between the shoulders. Then let the air go easily. This is one great exercise for keeping the chest full, flexible, and in good condition. Straighten up, fill your lungs full, stretch your chest, and straighten your spine, and exhale easily. In this exercise, you must repeat in season and out of season, at all times and in all places, until you form a habit of doing it. You can easily do so. Whenever you step out of doors into the fresh, pure air, breathe. When you are at work and think of yourself and your position, breathe. When you are in company and are reminded of the matter, breathe. When you are awake in the night, breathe. No matter where you are or what you are doing, whenever the idea comes to your mind, straighten up and breathe. If you walk to and from your work, take the exercise all the way. It will soon become a delight to you. You will keep it up, not for the sake of health, but as a matter of pleasure. Do not consider this a health exercise. Never take health exercises or do gymnastics to make you well. To do so is to recognize sickness as a present fact or as a possibility, which is precisely what you must not do. The people who are always taking exercises for their health are always thinking about being sick. It ought to be a matter of pride with you to keep your spine straight and strong, as much so as it is to keep your face clean. Keep your spine straight and your chest full and flexible for the same reason that you keep your hands clean and your nails manicured, because it is slovenly to do otherwise. Do it without a thought of sickness, present or possible. You must either be crooked and unsightly, or you must be straight. And if you are straight, your breathing will take care of itself. You will find the matter of health exercises referred to again in a future chapter. It is essential, however, that you should breathe air. It appears to be the intention of nature that the lungs should receive air containing its regular percentage of oxygen, and not greatly contaminated by other gases or by filth of any kind. Do not allow yourself to think that you are compelled to live or work where the air is not fit to breathe. If your house cannot be properly ventilated, move. And if you're employed where the air is bad, get another job. You can, by practicing the methods given in the preceding volume of this series, The Science of Getting Rich. If no one would consent to work in bad air, employers would speedily see to it that all workrooms were properly ventilated. The worst air is that from which the oxygen has been exhausted by breathing, as that of churches and theaters where crowds of people congregate and the outlet and supply of air are poor. Next to this is air containing other gases than oxygen and hydrogen, sewer gas, and the effluvium from decaying things. Air that is heavily charged with dust or particles of organic matter may be endured better than any of these. Small particles of organic matter, other than food, are generally thrown off from the lungs, but gases go into the blood. I speak advisedly when I say, other than food. Air is largely a food. It is the most thoroughly alive thing we take into the body. Every breath carries in millions of microbes, many of which are assimilated. The odors from earth, grass, tree, flower, plant, and from cooking foods are found in themselves. They are minute particles of the substances from which they come, and are often so attenuated that they pass directly from the lungs into the blood and are assimilated without digestion. And the atmosphere is permeated with the one original substance, which is life itself. Consciously recognize this whenever you think of your breathing and think that you are breathing in life. You really are, and conscious recognition helps the process. See to it that you do not breathe air containing poisonous gases, and that you do not rebreathe the air which has been used by yourself or others. That is all there is to the matter of breathing correctly. Keep your spine straight and your chest flexible, and breathe pure air, recognizing with thankfulness the fact that you breathe in the eternal life. That is not difficult, and beyond these things give little thought to your breathing except to thank God that you have learned how to do it perfectly. End of chapter 14. Recording by Jill Preston. Chapter 15 of Science of Being Well. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Jill Preston. Science of Being Well by Wallace D. Wattles. Chapter 15. Sleep. Vital power is renewed in sleep. Every living thing sleeps. Men, animals, reptiles, fish, and insects sleep, and even plants have regular periods of slumber. And this is because it is in sleep that we come in such contact with the principle of life and nature that our own lives may be renewed. It is in sleep that the brain of man is recharged with vital energy, and the principle of health within him is given new strength. It is of the first importance, then, that we should sleep in a natural, normal, and perfectly healthy manner. Studying sleep, we note that the breathing is much deeper and more forcible and rhythmic than in the waking state. Much more air is inspired when asleep than when awake, and this tells us that the principle of health requires large quantities of some element in the atmosphere for the process of renewal. If you would surround sleep with natural conditions, then the first step is to see that you have an unlimited supply of fresh and pure air to breathe. Physicians have found that sleeping in the pure air of out of doors is very efficacious in the treatment of pulmonary troubles, and, taken in connection with the way of living and thinking prescribed in this book, you will find that it is just as efficacious in curing every other sort of trouble. Do not take any halfway measures in this matter of securing pure air while you sleep. Ventilate your bedroom thoroughly, so thoroughly that it will be practically the same as sleeping out of doors. Have a door or window open wide. Have one open on each side of the room if possible. If you cannot have a good draught of air across the room, pull the head of your bed close to the open window so that the air from without may come fully into your face. No matter how cold or unpleasant the weather, have a window open and open wide, and try to get a circulation of pure air through the room. Pile on the bedclothes if necessary to keep you warm, but have an unlimited supply of fresh air from out of doors. This is the first great requisite for healthy sleep. The brain and nerve centers cannot be thoroughly vitalized if you sleep in dead or stagnant air. You must have the living atmosphere, vital with nature's principle of life. I repeat, do not make any compromise in this matter. Ventilate your sleeping room completely and see that there is a circulation of outdoor air through it while you sleep. You are not sleeping in a perfectly healthy way if you shut the doors and windows of your sleeping room, whether in winter or summer. Have fresh air. If you are where there is no fresh air, move. If your bedroom cannot be ventilated, get into another house. Next in importance is the mental attitude in which you go to sleep. It is well to sleep intelligently, purposefully, knowing what you do it for. Lie down thinking that sleep is an infallible vitalizer, and go to sleep with a confident faith that your strength is to be renewed, that you will awake full of vitality and health. Put purpose into your sleep as you do into your eating. Give the matter your attention for a few minutes as you go to rest. Do not seek your couch with a discouraged or depressed feeling. Go there joyously to be made whole. Do not forget the exercise of gratitude in going to sleep. Before you close your eyes, give thanks to God for having shown you the way to perfect health, and go to sleep with this grateful thought uppermost in your mind. A bedtime prayer of thanksgiving is a mighty good thing. It puts the principle of health within you into communication with its source, from which it is to receive new power while you are in the silence of unconsciousness. You may see that the requirements for perfectly healthy sleep are not difficult. First, to see that you breathe pure air from out of doors while you sleep, and second, to put the within into touch with the living substance by a few minutes of grateful meditation as you go to bed. Observe these requirements. Go to sleep in a thankful and confident frame of mind, and all will be well. If you have insomnia, do not let it worry you. While you lie awake, form your conception of health. Meditate with thankfulness on the abundant life which is yours. Breathe and feel perfectly confident that you will sleep in due time, and you will. Insomnia, like every other ailment, must give way before the principle of health aroused to full constructive activity by the course of thought and action herein described. The reader will now comprehend that it is not at all burdensome or disagreeable to perform the voluntary functions of life in a perfectly healthy way. The perfectly healthy way is the easiest, simplest, most natural, and most pleasant way. The cultivation of health is not a work of art, difficulty, or strenuous labor. You have only to lay aside artificial observances of every kind, and eat, drink, breathe, and sleep in the most natural and delightful way. And if you do this, thinking health, and only health, you will certainly be well. End of Chapter 15. Recording by Jill Preston. Chapter 16 of Science of Being Well. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Jill Preston. Science of Being Well by Wallace D. Wattles. Chapter 16. Supplementary Instructions. In forming a conception of health, it is necessary to think of the manner in which you would live and work if you were perfectly well and very strong. To imagine yourself doing things in the way of a perfectly well and very strong person until you have a fairly good conception of what you would be if you were well. Then take a mental and physical attitude in harmony with this conception, and do not depart from this attitude. You must unify yourself in thought with the thing you desire, and whatever state or condition you unify with yourself in thought will soon become unified with you in body. The scientific way is to sever relations with everything you do not want, and to enter into relations with everything you do want. Form a conception of perfect health, and relate yourself to this conception in word, act, and attitude. Guard your speech. Make every word harmonize with the conception of perfect health. Never complain. Never say things like these: I did not sleep well last night. I have a pain in my side. I do not feel at all well today, and so on. Say, I am looking forward to a good night's sleep tonight. I can see that I progress rapidly, and things of similar meaning. In so far as everything which is connected with disease is concerned, your way is to forget it. And in so far as everything which is connected with health is concerned, your way is to unify yourself with it in thought and speech. This is the whole thing in a nutshell. Make yourself one with health in thought, word, and action, and do not connect yourself with sickness either by thought, word, or action. Do not read doctor books or medical literature, or the literature of those whose theories conflict with those herein set forth. To do so will certainly undermine your faith in the way of living upon which you have entered, and cause you to again come into mental relations with disease. This book really gives you all that is required. Nothing essential has been omitted, and practically all the superfluous has been eliminated. The science of being well is an exact science, like arithmetic. Nothing can be added to the fundamental principles, and if anything be taken from them, a failure will result. If you follow strictly the way of living prescribed in this book, you will be well, and you certainly can follow this way, both in thought and action. Relate not only yourself, but so far as possible, all others, in your thoughts to perfect health. Do not sympathize with people when they complain, or even when they are sick and suffering. Turn their thoughts into a constructive channel if you can. Do all you can for their relief, but do it with the health thought in your mind. Do not let people tell their woes and catalog their symptoms to you. Turn the conversation to some other subject, or excuse yourself and go. Better be considered an unfeeling person than to have the disease thought forced upon you. When you are in company of people whose conversational stock in trade is sickness and kindred matters, ignore what they say and fall to offering a mental prayer of gratitude for your perfect health. And if that does not enable you to shut out their thoughts, say goodbye and leave them. No matter what they think or say, politeness does not require you to permit yourself to be poisoned by diseased or perverted thought. When we have a few more hundred of thousands of enlightened thinkers who will not stay where people complain and talk sickness, the world will advance rapidly toward health. When you let people talk to you of sickness, you assist them to increase and multiply sickness. What shall I do when I am in pain? Can one be in actual physical suffering and still think only thoughts of health? Yes. Do not resist pain. Recognize that it is a good thing. Pain is caused by an effort of the principle of health to overcome some unnatural condition. This you must know and feel. When you have a pain, think that a process of healing is going on to the affected part and mentally assist and cooperate with it. Put yourself in full mental harmony with the power which is causing the pain. Assist it. Help it along. Do not hesitate, when necessary, to use hot fomentations and similar means to further the good work which is going on. If the pain is severe, lie down and give your mind to the work of quietly and easily cooperating with the force which is at work for your good. This is the time to exercise gratitude and faith. Be thankful for the power of health which is causing the pain, and be certain that the pain will cease as soon as the good work is done. Fix your thoughts with confidence on the principle of health, which is making such conditions within you that pain will soon be unnecessary. You will be surprised to find how easily you can conquer pain, and after you have lived for a time in this scientific way, pains and aches will be things unknown to you. What shall I do when I am too weak for my work? Shall I drive myself beyond my strength, trusting in God to support me? Shall I go on like the runner, expecting a second wind? No, better not. When you begin to live in this way, you will probably not be of normal strength, and you will gradually pass from a low physical condition to a higher one. If you relate yourself mentally with health and strength, and perform the voluntary functions of life in a perfectly healthy manner, your strength will increase from day to day. But for a time you may have days when your strength is insufficient for the work you would like to do. At such times, rest and exercise gratitude. Recognize the fact that your strength is growing rapidly and feel a deep thankfulness to the Living One from which it comes. Spend an hour of weakness in thanksgiving and rest, with full faith that great strength is at hand, and then get up and go on again. While you rest, do not think of your present weakness. Think of the strength that is coming. Never at any time allow yourself to think that you are giving way to weakness. When you rest, as when you go to sleep, fix your mind on the principle of health, which is building you into complete strength. What shall I do about the great bugaboo which scares millions of people to death every year? Constipation. Do nothing. Read Horace Fletcher on the ABZ or Our Own Nutrition, and get the full force of his explanation of the fact that when you live on this scientific plane, you need not, and indeed cannot, have an evacuation of the bowels every day, and that an operation in from once in 3 days to once in 2 weeks is quite sufficient for perfect health. The gross feeders who eat from 3 to 10 times as much as can be utilized in their systems have a great amount of waste to eliminate, but if you live in the manner we have described, it will be otherwise with you. If you eat only when you have an earned hunger and chew every mouthful to a liquid, and if you stop eating the instant you begin to be conscious of an abatement of your hunger, you will so perfectly prepare your food for digestion and assimilation that practically all of it will be taken up by the absorbents, and there will be little, almost nothing, remaining in the bowels to be excreted. If you are able to entirely banish from your memory all that you have read in doctor books and patent medicine advertisements concerning constipation, you need give the matter no further thought at all. The principle of health will take care of it. But if your mind has been filled with fear thought in regard to constipation, it may be well in the beginning for you to occasionally flush the colon with warm water. There is not the least need of doing it, except to make the process of your mental emancipation from fear a little easier. It may be worthwhile for that. And as soon as you see that you are making good progress, and that you have cut down your quantity of food and are really eating in the scientific way, dismiss constipation from your mind forever. You have nothing more to do with it. Put your trust in that principle within you, which has the power to give you perfect health. Relate it by your reverent gratitude to the principle of life, which is all power, and go on your way rejoicing. What about exercise? Everyone is the better for a little all-round use of the muscles every day, and the best way to get this is to do it by engaging in some form of play or amusement. Get your exercise in the natural way, as recreation, not as a forced stunt for health's sake alone. Ride a horse or a bicycle, play tennis or 10-pins, or toss a ball. Have some avocation, like gardening, in which you can spend an hour every day with pleasure and profit. There are 1,000 ways in which you can get exercise enough to keep your body supple and your circulation good, and yet not fall into the rut of exercising for your health. Exercise for fun or profit. Exercise because you are too healthy to sit still, and not because you wish to become healthy or to remain so. Are long continued fasts necessary? Seldom, if ever. The principle of health does not often require 20, 30, or 40 days to get ready for action. Under normal conditions, hunger will come in much less time. In much long fasts, the reason hunger does not come sooner is because it has been inhibited by the patient himself. He begins the fast with the fear, if not actually with the hope, that it will be many days before hunger comes. The literature he has read on the subject has prepared him to expect a long fast, and he is grimly determined to go to a finish. Let the time be as long as it will, and the subconscious mind, under the influence of powerful and positive suggestion, suspends hunger. When, for any reason, nature takes away your hunger, go cheerfully on with your usual work, and do not eat until she gives it back. No matter if it is 2, 3, 10 days, or longer, you may be perfectly sure that when it is time for you to eat, you will be hungry, and if you are cheerfully confident and keep your faith in health, you will suffer from no weakness or discomfort caused by abstinence. When you are not hungry, you will feel stronger happier, and more comfortable if you do not eat than you will if you do eat, no matter how long the fast. And if you live in the scientific way described in this book, you will never have to take long fasts, you will seldom miss a meal, and you will enjoy your meals more than ever before in your life. Get an earned hunger before you eat, and whenever you get an earned hunger, eat. End of Chapter 16. Recording by Jill Preston. Chapter 17 of Science of Being Well. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Jill Preston. Science of Being Well by Wallace D. Wattles. Chapter 17. A summary of the science of being well. Health is perfectly natural functioning, normal living. There is a principle of life in the universe. It is the living substance from which all things are made. This living substance permeates, penetrates, and fills the interspaces of the universe. In its invisible state, it is in and through all forms, and yet all forms are made of it. To illustrate, suppose that a very fine and highly diffusible aqueous vapor should permeate and penetrate a block of ice. The ice is formed from living water and is living water in form, while the vapor is also living water unformed, permeating a form made from itself. This illustration will explain how living substance permeates all forms made from it. All life comes from it. It is all the life there is. The universal substance is a thinking substance, and takes the form of its thought. The thought of a form held by it creates the form, and the thought of a motion causes the motion. It cannot help thinking, and so is forever creating, and it must move on toward fuller and more complete expression of itself. This means toward more complete life and more perfect functioning, and that means toward perfect health. The power of the living substance must always be exerted toward perfect health. It is a force in all things, making for perfect functioning. All things are permeated by a power which makes for health. Man can relate himself to this power and ally himself with it. He can also separate himself from it in his thoughts. Man is a form of this living substance and has within him a principle of health. This principle of health, when in full constructive activity, causes all the involuntary functions of man's body to be perfectly performed. Man is a thinking substance, permeating a visible body, and the processes of his body are controlled by his thought. When man thinks only thoughts of perfect health, the internal processes of his body will be those of perfect health. Man's first step toward perfect health must be to form a conception of himself as perfectly healthy, and as doing all things in the way and manner of a perfectly healthy person. Having formed this conception, he must relate himself to it in all his thoughts, and sever all thought relations with disease and weakness. If he does this, and thinks his thoughts of health with positive faith, man will cause the principle of health within him to become constructively active, and to heal all his diseases. He can receive additional power from the universal principle of life by faith, and he can acquire faith by looking to this principle of life with reverent gratitude for the health it gives him. If man will consciously accept the health which is being continually given to him by the living substance, and if he will be duly grateful therefor, he will develop faith. Man cannot think only thoughts of perfect health unless he performs the voluntary functions of life in a perfectly healthy manner. These voluntary functions are eating, drinking, breathing, and sleeping. If man thinks only thoughts of health, has faith in health, and eats, drinks, breathes, and sleeps in a perfectly healthy way, he must have perfect health. Health is the result of thinking and acting in a certain way, and if a sick man begins to think and act in this way, the principle of health within him will come into constructive activity and heal all his diseases. This principle of health is the same in all and is related to the life principle of the universe. It is able to heal every disease and will come into activity whenever man thinks and acts in accordance with the science of being well. Therefore, every man can attain to perfect health. End of chapter 17. Recording by Jill Preston. End of Science of Being Well by Wallace D. Wattles.